Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello, and thanks for stopping by the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. So today I'm excited to talk to you about something that I actually talk about and speak about pretty much everywhere I go. It's an important tip for people to have. And what I'm going to talk to you about is the secret to increasing your pay and climbing the ladder of success, whatever that means for you. And so in this episode, you're going to discover how you can easily set yourself up for a career full of raises and promotions, if that interests you. If that doesn't interest you, you probably want to go ahead and stop the podcast now. But if you like the idea of more pay and being promoted, whether that's up the org chart or just moving around, getting into different positions, maybe lateral moves, doesn't always mean a pay raise when you get promoted. It could just be a different job, that sort of thing. But anyway, if that interests you, keep listening, because I'm gonna give you some simple common sense information. It's easy to understand. You're gonna get it right away, but doesn't mean you're gonna go out and do it today or even tomorrow. But if you want to accelerate your pay throughout your career, and you want to accelerate your advancement throughout your career, I'm about to give you a tip, a golden nugget, as I call it. And I share this all over the country. Rhea and I just recently got through traveling. We actually spoke at 6 different locations over 8 days. We traveled over 7,000 miles. We were all the way from the East Coast, Seattle, Washington, and Vancouver, Canada, and then on the West Coast, and back to the East Coast to Savannah, Georgia. And we actually spoke 8 times at 6 different locations. That we were busy. And this is one of the things, I probably shared this at every single speaking engagement, because I can find a way to weave it into anything that I'm talking about, and it's important to people. So let's get into it. So when I'm traveling and I'm speaking, I ask people a lot of times, especially in smaller groups where I actually can interact with the people. I ask them, what do you get paid for every day when you come to work? And I'm asking you right now, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what job you do, no matter how long you've been doing it, what do you get paid for every day? Hardly ever does anybody tell me what I'm about to tell you. But I don't think it, I know it. What I'm about to tell you is what you get paid for every day. Whether you know it or not, whether you agree or not, whether you care or not, doesn't make any difference. You get paid every day for your experience. That's what you're paid for every day, your experience. What do you bring to the table? When I say experience, it's the combination of your character. That means who you are as a person, how you've developed yourself. That's experience. You're not born with a certain type of character. You develop that as you grow and learn, or grow and don't learn. It depends on what kind of character you got, or don't grow. But you're going to grow in one way or the other, positive or negative direction. And then your competency. What all have you learned throughout your entire life? It could be what you've learned from a parent growing up. It could be what you learned in school, high school, trade school, college, university, wherever you've learned, on-the-job training, on-the-job experience, years of experience from your coworkers. It doesn't make any difference. Everything I just described, whatever all of that is for you, that's your experience. Basically, that's who you are as a person. What can you do? How can you do it? Because it ain't always, remember, competency is about what you do, but how you do it, that's about your character. And I always tell you, your character is either going to launch you or limit you. So what I'm teaching you in this lesson, that I hadn't really got to the lesson part yet, I'm still kind of getting you to it. But it's going to require a high degree of character to do what I'm telling you. Anybody can understand it, though. It doesn't matter what kind of character you have. You'll nod your head if you're listening when I explain this to you, and you'll agree. You'll tell yourself a story like, is that true? And you'll say, yeah, it's pretty simple. But will you go out and do it? That determines how much character you have. But if you got enough character to go do it, it's going to work for you. So you're paid for your experience every day. Every day you go to work, that's what you're selling. You're selling yourself, which is your experience. What can you do? What are you capable of? And even what is your potential? Because your potential is based on your experience. What have you achieved in the past? What have you been able to learn in the past when you didn't know anything about it? How were you able to perform? Did you flop around all over the place like a fish out of water? Or did you make it happen like a fish in the water? So when you realize you walking into to work every day, you're being paid for your experience. I always hear a lot of people. I've seen it throughout my career. I still hear today. People want to make more money. Why not? More money makes a better life for most people, or at least it gives you the potential for a better life. A little bit more comfort, gives you freedom and options. When I say a better life, that's what I'm talking about. More money gives you more freedom and more options, whatever that means for you. So if you want to make more money, hang in here with me, right? First of all, do you agree you get paid for your experience every day? That's what you selling. You come to work every day, sell your experience. When you leave every day, guess what you do with it? You take it with you because it resides in your mind. It's your brain. Everything you know how to do physically or mentally, your brain is like the computer that makes it all happen. And you take that with you. You don't take it out and leave it with them. You take it with you. And then the next day you come in, you sell it to them again. You're selling your experience again. Then you take it back with you. Take it home with you. And you don't have to come back and sell it to them the next day. You can decide to sell it to somebody new. Somebody else might decide they value your experience more than your current employer values your experience. What that means is you can go get a job someplace else and get yourself a raise, possibly a promotion, just by changing who you're selling your experience to. Makes sense that you'd always want to sell your experience to someone who values it the most, as long as they got good character. That's the key. Don't want to forget about that piece. So if you want to make more money, real simple right here, guess what you need more of? It's pretty simple. You need more experience. Common sense. Remember, everything I teach you all the time is common sense stuff. But I'm trying to slow you down, provoke your thought, raise your level of awareness. Because in my career, especially when I was in the military and the Marines, the first thing I started hearing was never volunteer for anything. Now, what I'm about to teach you is the opposite of that. I'm going to teach you volunteer for everything relative to your interest. Don't volunteer for something you're not interested in, you don't want to do one time, much less 1,000 times, unless it'll build trust with someone you want to build trust with. You may not want to do the job, but you want to build trust. So you go do a job you wouldn't normally do. This gets complicated in a hurry when you start talking about why you do certain things. But the main thing I want to talk to you about is if you want to increase your pay, you need to increase your experience. And how do you do that? You don't do it by asking for a raise. When I'm speaking in the audience and I talk about what I'm telling you right now about not asking for a raise, I'll ask people, like if I'm going to do a new job, I'm going to volunteer for a new job. A lot of times when people volunteer to do a new job, especially if the leaders are looking for somebody to do it and they're struggling maybe to find somebody to do the job, maybe it's a job you haven't done or you haven't been in that role, you hadn't had that responsibility, you raise your hand, right? You raise your hand and say, hey, boss, I'll do it. That's definitely going to build some trust. A lot of people raise their hand, though, because they think saying they'll do something comes with an automatic raise. And a lot of times it does. But I ain't worried about those times it does. I want to talk to you about when it doesn't. Because to me, it doesn't matter. I ain't worried about the raise. I'm not raising my hand to get a raise in that moment. I'm raising my hand to gain some new experience. And once I get that experience, I can get paid for it over and over and over the rest of my life. But I'll ask people in the audience, y'all be standing on stage and I'll raise my hand. I'll say, if you were going to pay me for doing what I just did, meaning raise my hand literally from my side to my palms up in the air, hand raised above my head, what would you pay me to do that? It's a silly question, right? You wouldn't pay me nothing to raise my hand. But most people think they should be paid for raising their hand. I remember one time I had an opportunity to lead a lean transformation in the company I was working at. But they didn't come to me first. The plant manager didn't come to me. I was a process engineer at the time. He didn't come to me. He came to his 7 or 8 staff managers who reported to him, people like the HR manager, the production manager, the inventory control manager, engineering manager. I can't even remember, quality manager. A lot of different people. There's about 7 or 8 of these different managers that was reporting to him. And he went to them, try to get some of those folks to take additional responsibility of leading our lean transformation. We had never done anything relative to lean in that company at the time. And we were a large multi-billion-dollar company with like 70 locations around the world, but never had done lean at that time. And lean, if you don't know, that's just intentional, methodical process improvement. There's principles related to lean, just like there is leadership. And so if you don't know about that, you learn about that. That'll be some more experience that'll get you highly paid and promoted, as long as you can deliver results. So anyway, none of those managers wanted the additional responsibility. They didn't want to do what I'm teaching you right here. They were content with their pay and their job, like a lot of people are. I hope as you're listening to this, you really think how many people won't do what I'm telling you, because if you will, you're going to separate yourself from the crowd. You're not playing their game. You're not playing the competition's game, and you're not playing the boss's game. You're playing your game, because you're in business for you. You work for yourself, not for anybody else. You want to grow and develop your organization, which is you, which is determined, your success, again, determined by your experience relative to character and competency. So none of those formal authority leaders, the staff managers, none of them wanted to take on that responsibility. So the leader came to me, the plant manager came to me and asked me, would I lead it? Guess what I did? I raised my hand. I said, yeah, man, I'll do it. I'll make it happen. I said, you got to know I've never done it before, but I want to do it. As long as you'll let me read, I'm going to be reading on the job, and I'm going to be reading at home. And I'm going to be taking what I'm learning and applying it, and then I'm going to be teaching it to other people. But I got to get educated on it first. But I got my hand raised, and I got the opportunity. And that was around 2005. I didn't ask for a raise. I didn't get offered a raise. Again, what had I done in that moment? In the moment he asked me would I do it, I said yes, raised my hand. What had I actually done that deserved another penny? Nothing. He don't know if I'm going to do it or I ain't going to do it. Just because I say I'm going to do it don't mean I'm going to do it. He don't even know if I can do it, even if I want to do it. How the people going to respond to me? Can I get results? I'm standing there telling the man, I don't even know how to do it. I got to figure it out. Why should I be paid more? I shouldn't, I don't think. But I learned throughout my career, nobody ever taught me this, but I learned this lesson I'm teaching you. And if you've read my book, Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines, that book is full of principles related to how to become a sought after employer of choice. How do you become the, sought after employee of choice? That's what Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines, it's all about how to become a high impact individual, which will make you a sought after employee of choice, which means you're going to get raises and you're going to get promotions. That book is full of stuff like I'm talking to you about right now. In that book, I think it's chapter 22 where I teach you ask for responsibility. Since I wrote that book, I think I wrote that book in 2016. 6 years later, I still talk about that, asking for responsibility. But now I figured out how to say it in a more influential way, and I talk to people about asking for experience. A lot of people, I don't know why, they just scared of responsibility. They're afraid they're going to have to do some work. So they don't want to ask for responsibility. But it's the exact same thing. I've just enhanced the way that I teach it. I say, raise your hand and ask for experience. Same exact thing. I want responsibility. I'm going to raise my hand. Responsibility for doing something new. But that whole book, if you want to load up some golden nuggets, you go get that book. And you can learn about it. Start listening to episode 65. I'll have a 30-part series right here on this podcast. You can go start listening to it. But you ain't going to get all the gold just by listening to it. I'm not reading you the book. The book is very dense with nuggets that's going to help you go and grow. So I raised my hand. I did that. Earlier in my career, I was running a CNC lathe, a twin spindle lathe, and a gear shaper, and a vertical milling center. I'd bring in raw steel, and after I run it through all those machines, it would come out, and it would be a finished coupling. And the coupling was made to go on a steel shaft that would attach to something, say like an electric motor with a steel shaft connecting to a shaft that's hooked to a roller on a conveyor. So you got to put a coupling between those two shafts to connect them, so one can transmit torque from the motor to the shaft that's being driven. So I was working in that cell. The guy who had worked in it before me said it would never work when they set that cell up. And he kind of had to do it. He had to take that job, and he moaned, groaned, and whined for a year, said it would never work. And relative to what they wanted it to do, performance-wise, it never did work with that guy there. He finally was able to bid off of that cell with multiple machines and go get on a big drill running just one machine. So he could load it up, hit a button, and sit there for 20 minutes and do nothing. He liked doing nothing. I like doing something because I like gaining experience. When I'm doing nothing, I ain't gaining much experience. But anyway, I went in that cell. Nobody asked me to do more than was required. They just needed somebody to run that cell. I raised my hand. I bid on the job. That was how I raised my hand. But they didn't know what was coming. And neither did I. But I knew what I was going to try to do is I was going to go try to improve that cell. Nobody had to tell me because I was going to do it so I could gain experience. And I knew it would help me get a raise. I knew it would help me get promoted. I didn't know it was going to help me make this podcast today because I had no vision of me doing anything like I'm doing these days. But it was me living this principle before I had ever really thought about it on purpose. I had never read anything about it. This was like 1998, somewhere around in that time period, 97, 98. I didn't read my first leadership book till 2008. This was 10 years before I ever read any of the books that I started reading, where I learned all the stuff that I'm teaching. But also, you can tell I learned a lot before I ever started reading because I was proactive. I was hungry for growth. What I've done as I've grown is learn how to articulate what I was doing to get results, to help other people get results. So I'm sharing it with you today. So within just like 6 months or a year, I forget now, I wrote about it in some of my books, and whenever I wrote about it, I went back and did the research and figured it out. But right now in this moment, I can't remember if it was 6 months or a year. Seemed like 6 months. Either way, doesn't matter. What happened was I doubled the output of that sale in just a short amount of time. The other guy couldn't make it hardly function, and I doubled it so that every shift, all 3 shifts, could double their output. And I didn't just double the output on my shift. What I did created the other 2 shifts also to double their output. That's pretty significant. And I got raised. I got a raise. I got multiple raises. I got promotion. I got promoted into a job that was hard to get. CNC programming job. Because I learned so much when I started tweaking programs, making changes. I couldn't do it in the beginning. I had to call the engineering folks, the programmers out, recommend a change, get them to buy into what I was seeing, and they had to buy into me, and then they had to go do the work to make the change and then write a new program, then had to bring it out, and I had to test it, make sure there's no errors and it actually worked, and then validate it. So I did that for months on many, many different parts. Guess what I was doing? I was raising my hand saying, hey, I learned how to program without being paid to program. Guess what I got paid to do later? Program. I learned to program about 70 different machines during that time. Also, I did CAD. I was doing drafting. I was drafting process drawings for the parts. I was doing tools drawings for the tooling on the machines, chuck setups, all kind of things, because I raised my hand and asked for more experience. I couldn't articulate it, but I knew what I was doing was I was getting ahead of everybody else. And if you ever come up against somebody who's got more experience than you, remember that what I'm talking about is character and competency combined. You're going to lose every time. So when all these other people moaning, groaning, and whining, they don't want to raise their hand unless they're going to get paid to raise their hand. You go ahead and raise your hand. You go ahead and be proactive. And there's times you'll raise your hand, get some experience, and you may not get the raise at the company you're working at. That doesn't mean you can't get a raise. You just have to go somewhere else and get it, where somebody values that experience more. That same company I was just telling you about, I got promoted a lot of times. At one point, toward the end, actually the last 6, 7 years I was there, I started going to college while I was working. It took me that long to get a 4-year degree. See, every time I went to class, though, I was gaining experience. That's what that degree says. When you get a degree, it says this person's got a whole lot of experience relative to whatever they learned in their degree. That's what that is. It's just an identifier saying, hey, this person has experience in this area. So the day I graduated in December 2002. In February 2003, 2 months later, I went across town to a new company and I almost doubled my pay. Had the same experience. I had been working at my company 14 years when I left. So when I graduated, I had been working there the same amount of time, and I worked there for two more months after I graduated. Nothing happened, pay-wise, promotion-wise, but I knew I was sitting on some new experience, and I was about to go leverage that new experience, because that degree, on top of all my years of experience doing all the different things I was doing, by that time I was doing cost estimation engineering, so I could operate nearly all those machines in that plant. I could program pretty much all those machines in that plant. I could set them up. I could do the drafting, the programming. Then I was in cost estimation engineering. I could set up a sale. I could bring in new machines, set them up, program them, get them set up with tooling, teach people how to run them. I could do all that stuff. Then I was in cost estimation engineering. So I quoted special products and come up worked with engineering and decide could we provide this special product? If so, how long is it going to take? How much materials is it going to take? So I had to establish the cost and all that kind of stuff, and then quote the sales team or the distributor or the customer directly. I dealt with all those folks. So I had a lot of experience, but I had to go across town to get paid for it. And I didn't know nothing about that company. I ain't never worked in that company. I had never worked in that industry. And they nearly about doubled my pay to come to work there. And it was actually closer to my house, so I didn't have to drive as far. So those are just a couple of examples. But if you want to get paid more, you need more experience. Or you need to leverage the experience you have. Don't mean argue with the boss. It don't mean try to manipulate the boss. Say, hey, if you don't pay me more, I'm leaving. All that's poor character. Don't play that game. You want to leave, go find somebody who will value you more, and you leave. You leave on a positive note, not a negative note. So I hope you got some value out of this. It's real simple principle. I could have taught it to you in a couple of sentences, but you might not have bought in quite the same. I could have just said, if you want to know the secret to increasing your pay and climbing the ladder of success, just get more experience. I could have said that in about 15 to 20 seconds, but I try to give you some explanation to help provoke your own thought, to get you thinking, to raise your level of awareness, and hopefully to get you to do it. I mean, you're only going to make more money or get promotions. See, a lot of people, you'll hear people in the workplace, they don't want promotions. Why don't they want it? Because they don't want the responsibility. What they're saying is, I don't want any more experience. They want more money, but they don't want more experience. That doesn't make very much sense in my way of thinking. And then they always frustrated. Like when I got that programmer's job, there were a lot of frustrated people because there were people who'd been there a lot longer than me. And most people were getting promoted kind of on seniority into a job like that. But I stood out. I was different than most people because I did a whole lot more without getting paid for it than most people. So it was real easy to stand out. And that's what I want you to know and take away from this podcast. It is easy for you to stand out if you're willing to go gain experience, raise your hand, ask for experience. You got to do something critical, though. You got to go deliver results. That's what you're going to get paid for eventually, is being able to deliver results. But you're going to separate yourself from the crowd, especially if you're willing to move and relocate. Most companies, unless you have high impact leaders that understand the stuff I'm talking to you about, and there are some out there, they're not a lot. They'll pay you well, they'll promote you well within their company because they value your experience and they understand they're growing and developing people relative to competency and character in their company. So they understand the value of it. They know what you're worth to them and to somebody else. They also know if you come in and turn in your notice and tell them you're leaving, and you tell them you're going to double your pay, and they say, well, I'll double your pay, just stay. If anybody ever tells you that, I hope you don't stay. If you worth double the money and they ain't been paying you double the money until they found out you were leaving, they'll do it over and over and over and over again to you. When you decide to leave, you leave. Don't play the game that they're going to play. Don't try to play some of your own games. Just go get your experience and then get you a raise within the company you work in now, or have the courage to step out, move. I know people who have moved across the country to double their pay. And then later they double their pay again once or twice or even more times by moving and bouncing around. I'm trying to help you get ahead, make more money. I want you to have more freedom and more options, because if you do, your life will be better. I do this podcast to help you make your life better, but you got to go do the work. So go check out Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines if you haven't. You need to be in sponge mode in that book and then apply it. You're going to separate yourself from the crowd. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.